During the course of this very short slideshow, we're going to peel back the layers of anatomy and physiology, and we're really going to talk about the structure of the penis and as it's situated in the body so that you understand how this part of the body works so that you can have more pleasure and more ecstasy in your own self-pleasure touch or when you are touching this part of someone else's body. So we all start out the same. In this picture that we're looking at, we are looking at the genitalia as it develops in the course of being in utero. So at the very top, we're looking at the undifferentiated genital complex structure for any body's baby. Okay, for any baby. That means that all of the babies that start out with this kind of structure. It is undifferentiated, it is the same. So that means that as we develop in utero, that the same kinds of structures are analogous and they're just organized in a slightly different fashion. So what that looks like when you're looking at this picture, the different colors on each one of the figures represents the analogous structures. So when you look at the middle set of figures on the left and right, you see the yellow and the pink and the blue and the purple. And each one of those from side to side are analogous structures. The yellow represents the glans, which becomes the head of the penis or the head of the clitoris. The pink is the urogenital fold and groove, and this becomes either the raphe of the penis on the left-hand side, or it becomes the inner lips on the right-hand side on the lower picture. The blue is called the lateral tubercle, and that becomes either the shaft on the penis on the left or the hood of the clit on the right. And then the purple is the labioscrotal swelling. So that means that as it develops, it either becomes the outer labia on the right-hand side picture, bottom right, or it becomes the scrotum on the bottom left. So because we all start out the same, this helps us understand that as human beings, we either have 2 holes or we have 3 holes. 2 holes means that we have a urethra and an anus, and 3 holes means we have a urethra, an anus, and a vagina, or what some people call a front hole, as opposed to the back hole, which would refer to the anus. So let's get into the very basics of the penis, the cock, the shaft, whatever it is that you want to call it. Here we have the flaming cock, and you can see by its labeling, we have the head at the very top. We have the corona, which is the ridge around the head, the sulcus, which is the underneath side or the valley. And then you have the frenulum. The frenulum is that midline point that connects the head to the shaft. And in fact, you might even call the frenulum the entire midline from the head all the way down to the base. But most people refer to the frenulum as that place that is right there at the space that joins the head to the shaft. You can see that the shaft is located there in the middle, and the shaft is the thing that most of us put our hands around, and then you have the testicles, which are located inside the scrotum. So here is a generic view of the penis, and you can see that it is a drawing in context. So you can see the rectum, the anus, and the bladder all labeled. And what we're focusing on here in this drawing is the erectile tissue. The erectile tissue is the dark, squiggly, filled-in lines, the space of that soft cock. And you can also see the dotted line on the left-hand side of the picture that indicates where the erect penis would stand. Now, side by side, inch for inch, pound for pound, the clitoris and the cock have the same amount of erectile tissue. So you can see this is the same artist who drew these, and the squiggly, dark, filled-in areas are all the erectile tissues. In the left-hand side, you can see that is the clitoris. Inside the inner lips, around the urethral sponge, and the perineal sponge. And on the right-hand side, you can see that it is the bottom shaft, the bottom part of the shaft of the cock, as well as the top part of the shaft of the cock. We're going to get into more detail as we go. Now, here we're looking at Frank Netter's medical drawings. You can see here the hollow organs of the pelvis. You can see the rectum, which is the big pink tube on the back side of each one of these drawings. You can see the bladder in the left-hand drawing, the drawing with the cock and the balls. The bladder is that big round organ in the middle. And in the right-hand drawing, you can see the bladder and then the uterus and then the rectum. Now, the cock exists in context. So what we're looking at here is where the front sheath of the skin and the layers of fat have been pulled away, and then we can see the top layer of fascia as well as the top layer of muscle. And what's important about this is just recognizing that the whole front of the abdomen, as it gets lower and lower, connects into the top of the pubic bone, and that is what that looks like, a horizontal line where everything from the abdomen basically just stops right there above the base of the penis. And you can also see the suspensory ligaments. The suspensory ligaments are one on each side that connects the scrotum into the abdomen. Now, this suspensory ligament comes out of the abdomen, comes over the front of the pubic bone, and connects and holds the testicles and the associated structures inside the scrotum in place and holds them to the body. So if you've ever heard of an inguinal hernia, then this is what we're talking about. We're talking about this space right here where either that suspensory ligament or this big vein comes out of the vein and the artery come out of this area between the abdomen and the leg, right? So this is the groin. Now here's the structure of the cock as if the body was cut right in half. Okay, so in this left-hand picture, you can see the back, what looks like an empty tube, that's the rectum. And the rectum comes down to the anus. And here in this drawing, it's a very small opening. The internal and the external anal sphincter are there that hold that space closed until it's ready for waste to pass out. Then we can also see the bladder, that empty hollow organ, and the tube that comes from the bladder, the urethra, runs through the prostate and then comes into the penis and flows through the penis and then out the top or the front or the hole, the head of the penis. Now, there are two types of muscles in the penis. The bottom muscle, the corpus spongiosum, fills with blood. It is a erectile tissue and it surrounds the urethra. And it looks like a darker red color. And the other type of muscle is called the corpus cavernosum. And this is the muscle bed that is on top of the spongiosum. It is on the top of the penis, and what looks like here, it looks like a bunch of different little chambers or spaces that create one muscle bed. And that's exactly what it is. It is a series of chambers that fill up sequentially with blood as the penis gets engorged. And you can see a cutaway of that in the right-hand picture. So what we're looking at is if we cut off the penis and we were looking right down at the structure of its formation. So on the bottom piece, the darker red here, that's the corpus spongiosum, and the urethra flows through that muscle bed. And then on top are two separate muscles that live side by side, and this is the corpus cavernosum, and these fill up sequentially with blood. And then you can see the red and the blue dots and lines here are representing the veins and the arteries. And you can see how they're wrapped in fascia and then wrapped in fat and then wrapped in skin. Now here we're looking at the urogenital triangle. We're looking at the two structures side by side, the analogous structures from different types of body, seeing how they are very, very similar. The urogenital triangle is best seen in the right-hand picture, in the picture with the vagina. And this was mentioned in the other video, the other pussy power video, where we really go into depth about the pussy. But to recap, the urogenital triangle is the triangular space from the pubic bone at the very top, down to the left-hand side to the sits bones on the left-hand side, and across the perineal muscle body to the right-hand sits bones, and then back up to the top of the pubic mound. And inside that urogenital triangle is the vulva, the vagina, and the urethra. Forming that urogenital triangle is the bony structures of the base of the pelvis and also the ischio cavernosum. And the ischio cavernosum is the muscle beds, or the muscles that attach at the top of the pubic bone and go alongside each side of the inferior pubic ramus till it reaches the ischial tuberosity, or the sits bones, right? So left and right side become the side of the triangle, muscular sides of the triangle. Now, when we shift over to the left-hand picture, the picture of the cock, we can see how those muscles are virtually identical. We can see these two muscle beds that connect in at the ischial tuberosity and actually go up and into the penis and become the corpus cavernosum muscles, become those muscles that fill up sequentially with blood and connect in and become part of the structure of the cock. On the right-hand side, we can see that there is a bulbous spongiosus muscle. It goes on each side of the opening of the vagina. And on one hand, the right-hand side of the right-hand picture, it is cut away, but that muscle goes on either side of the opening of the vagina, and you can see it on the analogous structure would be the corpus spongiosum, which you can see right there along the bottom side of the cock, right there, front and center. Now, you can also see that the pelvic structure is virtually the same. The pelvic floor, the pubococcygeus muscle, the levator ani muscle group is right there. You can see the anus. You can see how the muscles are very similar. They wrap around the anus, and then you can see the gluteus maximus and the coccyx. And so, each one of the different types of bodies that we have and the different types of genital structure organization is really just a very simple reorganization of structures that are virtually identical. So moving on, we can see here a little bit more of the cock with the whole structure, okay? And you can see the rectum, which is that nice bright purple. The rectum connects to the anus. Right above the anus is the root, and this can also be referred to as the perineum, the place that is behind the balls and in front of the anus. And the root, as you see, that muscle stretches and reaches into the shaft of the penis. You can see the entire penis. You can see the head, the whole shaft of the penis, and how it connects up. You can see the bladder in that bright green, and the urethra as it goes all the way down. So let's talk a little bit about the structure. So the testicle is the place where the sperm is stored, where it's generated, where testosterone is generated, and this is where the sperm comes out. Now, when the sperm comes out of the testicle, it is not mature. It does not just go fully formed from the testicle and then around the roller coaster and come right out of the urethra. So the sperm goes from the testicles to the epididymis, and the epididymis is that yellow area. It looks like a comma shape, and it's on top and behind the testes inside the scrotum. It is a single, very tightly coiled tube that is about 20 feet in length, and it has the kind of texture of cooked pasta. And this is the place where sperm mature and develop their ability to move or swim as they pass through this area. So the sperm have to go quite a distance, and they really build up, their strength in order to get into the vas deferens. The vas deferens is the tube that connects the epididymis up and around the front of the pubic bone, around the backside of the bladder, and into the seminal vesicle. The seminal vesicle is a place where more chemistry is added to the ejaculate. And this chemistry produces a milky alkaline fluid that's comprised of proteins, enzymes, fructose, and vitamin C. And this fluid is released actually at the end of the ejaculation, and it is thought to create a bit of a spermicide that would kill off the next male's sperm. Now, this part of the fluid represents about 50 to 70% of the total fluid of ejaculate that comes out. When the sperm moves through the seminal vesicle and the seminal vesicle shoots out this next round of chemistry, the fluid goes through the prostate, and the prostate contributes a lubricant that is what we see as the milky fluid, the sort of the much more thick fluid. This constitutes about 30% of the total seminal volume. And this fluid activates the sperm and helps them maintain their mobility. This fluid that comes out of the prostate is prostatic specific antigen, prostatic fluid, and this also includes proteins and enzymes. And it's thought that this helps break up the mucus at the opening of the cervix, at the os, to ease the passageway so that the sperm can get through the cervix and into the uterus. Now, that's not the end story. The sperm and the ejaculate still has to go through the Cowper's gland, and that's that bright pink, tiny, little gland that is between the prostate and the penis. And the Cowper's gland is actually what produces the precum. So this is the stuff that, as arousal is happening and the cock is getting hard and the body is getting ready to consider potentially having an ejaculatory experience, that the Cowper's gland creates lubricant so that the sperm have a really slippery path to slide out of the urethra and into its next adventure. So here we're looking at the intact penile anatomy, right? So this is a picture of the penis that has not been circumcised. So the foreskin is still attached. And just a little bit about circumcision. The movement toward circumcision across English-speaking countries in the 20th century was really created as a way to curb masturbation through the guise of hygiene. That we needed to, cut off this piece of skin because it would be cleaner for people, and the part of what happens is that when the foreskin is cut off, actually up to 80% of the nerve endings are also removed. So if you cut the nerves off, then maybe it won't feel that good to masturbate. Although when you talk to men or people who have penises and they really like to touch their penis and because it feels really good, circumcision doesn't actually curb masturbation at all. But it does, for some people, really reduce the amount of sensation that they feel, which is a real bummer, a real disservice to pleasure. So what we can see here is the foreskin attached. We can see, of course, the glands, the shaft of the penis. You can see the bright yellow, that is the urethra. And you can get a sense from this drawing of how the foreskin slides over the head of the penis, kind of keeps it under wraps, if you will, in the same way that the hood of the clitoris keeps the head of the clitoris under wraps until it's fully engorged and really aroused and it's ready to come out and play, essentially. And so the foreskin attaches at the top of the sulcus and around the head to the underside of the frenulum. And it creates a mucous membrane in there that helps keep this foreskin lubricated and the head lubricated so that the skin can move up and down and back and forth and be able to, when you pull the skin back, expose the head. And here we're looking at the nerves of the abdomen and how the nerves of the abdomen innervate from the belly into the penis. Now, the way that nerves work in very broad brushstroke terms is that the nerves actually are layered in through and between layers of fascia, layers of muscle, and in around the organs. So it's not as if our body is constructed in a way where we have, the organs are together and then the nerves are its own layer and the muscles are its own layer. And, truly what is happening is that the nerves are going in between muscle beds and in between layers of fascia and really moving through the layers of the body. So that means that anytime there is tightness in the system, tightness in the muscles of the abdomen, or even tightness in the back, that if it is tightening around a nerve branch that innervates the pelvis or innervates the penis, that this can create tension or can create constriction that can dampen the sensations in the genitals. So if we're not moving our body and creating mobility and motility in our body, and especially in our pelvis, then this can contribute to different kinds of symptoms or diseases in the pelvis and in the penis. For example, it could contribute to irritable bowel syndrome, hemorrhoids, erectile dysfunction, also early ejaculation. When the pelvis is feeling really tight and there's a lot of constriction and there's not a lot of movement, then it's hard to get the blood flow into the penis. So again, we need to be moving our body. And here is another really great picture, a diagram where you can see the innervation of the nerves into the base of the pelvis. So our butthole, our asshole is always involved in our orgasmic experience because our pelvis contracts, and it contracts the internal and the external anal sphincter, that there is a pulsing or a contraction, that most of us, when we start to get really aroused, we're touching either the head of the cock or the head of the clitoris, that we begin to contract our butthole. We begin to contract our pelvis. And so if we're already in a state of total contraction and we're already a real tight ass, then it limits the capacity for us to tighten and release in order for us to create waves of pleasure where we can process all of the sensations. So the pudendal and the pelvic nerves both innervate the anus and the cock and the balls, and they weave in between the muscles and a layer of fascia. So again, if your ass is really tight and or you're protecting your asshole, then you could be creating a situation where you're diminishing your own erotic potential. So the most important thing I believe that we can do to enhance pleasure in our genitalia is actually to relax our butthole and to use touch and breath and movement to have a globally relaxing effect, which can help increase your stamina, release tension, and create more opportunities for your sex to be more fun and playful and more engaged. So here's the last slide, just to let you know the two main resources that I used for this slideshow. Frank Netter's Atlas of Human Anatomy. If you want to geek out on amazing anatomy drawings, please take a look at this. It's absolutely brilliant. And Out in the Open, the Complete Male Pelvis. That really tells us a lot about the structure of the pelvis and movement, and how to create more movement and mobility in the pelvis so that you can have more pleasure. And when I work more closely and one-on-one with men, we're really diving into the content of this book to be able to create more opportunity and more flow in the pelvis so that your experience with your erection can be more in line, more integrated, and really more fun. So thanks for joining me for Pleasing the Penis Pelvis. I look forward to seeing you on the other side.